you know, I can say it when no one's around in my head, but boy, I just can't get it out of my mouth. Folcolini and the Great Cross. His documentaries include Art Mind, The Healing Power of Sacred Art, Healing the Luminous Body, The Way of the Shaman, Healing Sounds, featuring Jonathan Goldman, The Secret of Alchemy, which discusses the cross at Hedane, and many more. Sharon Rose, M-A-E-D-D, is a filmmaker, teacher, writer, choreographer, and Fulbright Senior Research Scholar in world mythology, religion, and the sacred arts of theater, music, and dance. She is the writer-director of the feature-length documentary 2012, The Odyssey, author of the award-winning book, The Path of the Priestess, a guidebook for awakening the divine feminine, creator of the DVD Yoga of Light, and producer of the Sacred Mysteries DVD collection. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio, Jay Wiedner and Sharon Rose. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
And I am not online.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello. There you are. You are very soft, but I am going to turn my volume up. Can you talk a little bit?
Sure. What do you want us to say? There you are.
Well, anything. I thought my connection dropped, and I'm going, okay, we're having a little technical difficulty. We're good. Hi, guys. Thank you for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, it is.
So I have to ask, I mean, I saw the documentary that was on TV. So were you guys in it? Because I didn't have your pictures at the time to look.
I was in it. I was one of the producers of it, and I was in it, but Sharon wasn't, no. But Sharon produced her documentary, 2012, The Odyssey, which I think was much better than the History Channel's.
And then we went on to do Time Wave 2013, which continues the journey that I took starting in 2006 to discover the teachings about 2012. So we have two of them, and the difference between our work and what you would see on the History Channel has to do with our belief in the future of humanity and to take people beyond fear. Even though we speak about the deep issues that are facing us right now, we don't run away from that. But we also know, in speaking to so many of the traditional people, the shamans and healers and experts, that we're in this amazing time of transformation, and we should not live in fear. We have to go into really right action and clarity.
Oh, and I totally agree. So, I mean, I think my listeners are pretty familiar with the concept of what's going on with 2012, but why don't we just kind of start with an introduction in case there's someone that's listening or is going to listen down the road that really isn't familiar with the concept?
Well, the concept of 2012 is actually was arrived at rather oddly, and in fact it wouldn't have even happened if it really hadn't been for the internet, because what happened was, before the early 90s, when the internet wasn't around, there were all these people doing research into esoteric subjects, and they would spend their lives frequently all alone in this research and never really know that many other people who are interested in the same things that they are interested in. But the internet changed all that, and so a lot of researchers who have been doing a lot of different kinds of research began to communicate with each other in the early 90s to the late 90s, and I was one of these people in a particular group where we began to realize that there were somewhere between 7 and 12 different prophecies from all over the world that seemed to, where these ancient people seemed to go out of their way to create some kind of way to send a message downstream into history or into the future that described some amazing and astonishing event that was to happen somewhere between, if the best we can do is say maybe 1992 and 2012. And the Mayans put it in the calendar, the famous Mayan calendar. The cross of Henday is an alchemical cross in the south of France, which describes the events that are going to happen right before the end of the world. Not the end of the age, I mean the end of the age, not the end of the world. And And we found out that the Egyptians had the same prophecies, and of course we know the Christians have a prophecy about something happening, and it goes on and on and on. And because of the internet, we were able to intertwine and weave these things together, compare them to see if they really had efficacy, and then basically the research ended about 1998. John Jenkins' research and my research and a lot of research, Alberto Villolda's, and all of us kind of just sat back and watched to see if indeed, the end of the age was at hand. And here we stand, 11 years later, and I'm fairly convinced that we are definitely living through some times, unprecedented moments in history, of which anything can happen between now and December 21st, 2012.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think on a personal, energetic level for everyone, in the last few years, there has been so much internal garbage that has been brought up for people to clear that I think it would be very easy for a big transformation to happen given another couple of years of getting our butts basically kicked every day and forcing us to change.
That's right, because human beings are, necessity is the mother of invention, and crisis is what precedes imagination. So frequently we'll create a crisis in our own lives, whether in a relationship or with fellow workers or something, because we have an inner desire for things to change, and we're doing it in a kind of an unsophisticated way by creating a crisis which will create change. But I think that's very an analogy to what's happening today. I think all of us are participating in creating a crisis because we know that what is happening here in the present cannot go on. And so by creating a crisis, we're going to create change and the necessity for change. And so the real question now is not, is there going to be a change? That is inevitable. The question is now, what kind of world are we going to create after the change? And that's what I'm more interested in.
And that's why we made the films. We could see this wave coming, this time wave coming, and this era of change. And we created the films so that we could give people really good information and speak with the experts and give them alternatives to the mainstream media that seems to be focusing on the fear-based end of the world story.
Yeah, what's that all about? Well, actually, let's start back a little bit, because everyone talks about the Mayan prophecies, but what do the Mayans have to say? That was one of my issues with that documentary, is it kept saying, well, the Egyptians had prophecies too, and they never said, and this is what they say.
No,
so what
they don't
do the
say.
prophecies say?
They don't say. None of them say. Not really. All they give you is a time. They say, at this time, there's going to be this great change.
Well, the Hindu cycle of the yugas, which I'm familiar with because of my years in India, talks about that time flows in cycles, just like the rising and setting of the sun or birth and death, and that there are actually within the cycle there are 4 ages. The age of gold, it's like the beginning of creation when everyone is completely aligned with their own divinity. And then as these 4 ages unfold, we become more and more densified, and we become more and more, we fall away from spirit. And so they go through the age of gold, and then to silver, then to bronze, and then the age of iron, where we are now. And during that, people are the most divorced from their spiritual essence. They're really cut off, actually, and, the lie becomes more prominent than the truth. There are many, many writings about this age and the chaos of this age. But as you said before, it also is this time of purification when, all the darkness is being stirred up and released so that we can once more go into this new golden age of light. That's
right. And you have to understand the why these people thought that this time period was so important, but never telling us what's going to happen, is because it was axiomatic what would happen. Because they didn't believe in linear time, they believed in cyclical time. They were obviously trying to tell us about the end of the Iron Age and the beginning of the Golden Age, because that was the single most important event in time that any of these mythologies held. So, because they were all cyclical instead of linear like we are. So we look at it and we just scratch our heads and say, you know, what the hell? These people are, you know, talking about some event, but they're not going out, you know, not being man enough to tell us what the event's going to be. And because we don't realize and understand that the only event that was of singular importance to the people of the ancient peoples was the return of the Golden Age, the return of the divine world, the return of back to the garden, a return back to partnership between men and women and between humans and the earth. And the thing that we've been falling away from for so many thousands of years. And I think we all have a dirty little secret. And our dirty little secret is that we really want this world to come to an end so that we can rebuild a new civilization on top of the ruins. And I think that that's really what's going on. And so this age is collapsing, and no one's really doing anything about it. They're printing up money. They're throwing money at everything, but nobody's actually doing anything about the central problems that we're facing. And so the central problems that we're facing are just going to get worse and worse and worse until they reach a point of total chaos. And in that chaos, a new organization reappears, and that's our only hope at this point.
And the ancient traditions say that when there's a problem, you have to go down to the root of that problem and pull it out by the roots, not put Band-Aids and more Band-Aids, which is what they seem to be doing now.
Exactly. Yeah,
but it seems like the people that are in charge, you know, they're the ones that need to be pulled out by the root.
They do. You're exactly right. See, in the Iron Age, the most corrupt people will be your leaders. That's what the Hindu texts say. The Hindu texts say that in the Kali Yuga, or what we call the Iron Age, the word bad will mean good. And in this world today, the word bad does mean good. And that's a direct prophecy. That's supposedly, when the word bad means good, that's supposed to be a warning that you're at the very end of the Iron Age.
And also there's extreme disturbances between men and women.
Yeah.
You know, in the Golden Age, they always call that the age of the feminine. And they talk about these four ages. The metaphor is a cow, which represents a symbol of the feminine, that in the first age is standing firmly on four legs, and as each age unfolds, it loses one of its legs until now it only has one leg left to stand on, and the feminine is completely undermined. And then when the shift of the ages comes, then we come back into balance and harmony between male and female.
Right.
So when this happens, because it sounds like, you know, when it makes this transition that there's going to be this huge opening, but is it going to be like, you know, you're driving down the freeway and then this opening, or, you know, in a very short period of time? Or do you think that it's something that's going to take, you know, 20, 50, 100 years to, you know, or more for us to evolve into?
Well, I don't think
because everybody has this belief that, you know, 2012, you know, December 21st, I'm going to wake up on the 22nd and something's going to be different.
No, well, that's not going to happen. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a comet will hit that night, but I don't think so. I think what they're saying is that the change is happening right now. The change actually started around 92, 93. And what the change was as the geomagnetic fields of the Earth are lessened, and they are lessening, we know that, are the constrictive forces, of the electrical constrictive forces that bind the Earth are loosened, and we become more psychic. We become more aware of everything. And the Internet is not the engine of this awareness. It's a symptom of the awareness. And as we, so the pedal got hit to the floor around 93 when the internet first got going really big, which was also when the Great Transition is predicted by the Mayans and the Cross of Henday and the Egyptians. When we start crossing through a 20-year-long veil, and we're nearing the end now, or 4 years out, 4 years out of the veil, towards the end of it. And if you'd said a year ago on the radio show that the stock market was going to drop down to 6,500, and on and on and on and on with all the things that have happened in the last year, no one would believe you. So we could say just make all sorts of crazy predictions for a year from now, and they're probably going to be too conservative, because everything is being undercut. The system is being undercut. It wasn't a real system. It was a virtual system. It had no reality. No one was producing anything. They were just passing bucks around and making electronic money out of thin air. It wasn't real. None of it was real. It was just a Disneyland, and it's all coming apart, and the only thing that will matter after 2012 is things that are real, like love, food, and music, and community, and, children.
Being in harmony with the earth itself, we have lost touch lost a visceral connection with the earth. The average age of a farmer right now is 57 years old. And, I talked to a friend who teaches in the Boston school system, and he said that children think that milk comes from the supermarket. That they don't connect. There's a complete disconnect. And I think that all that's happening now is gearing up to make us have to reconnect with our mother, the earth.
We are the baby boom generation, and the generation below the baby boomers are the first two generations in the entire history of the human race that does not know how to feed itself, does not know how to grow anything, is completely disconnected from their own food supply. And in that failure to pass down that knowledge from one generation to another will be the seeds of this dynamic change. And we are going to have to rethink everything. We've burned all the bridges to the past, and so everything is now in this really scary place where we don't know really what to do. But this is the thing is that in that scary moment of indecision, new realities will awaken our spirit, because we have to entertain every thought we can to possibly find a solution to the many problems. And it's in that moment, that necessity of moment, that we will discover the answers to almost all the problems that are facing us. And the answers are very simple. They're not complicated. They're very, very simple.
We need to make this reconnection with the higher realms, the what we call, and many of these traditions call, the luminous realms. And I think of the internet itself as a kind of a precursor to telepathy. When we interviewed Jose Arguelles, who was really one of the kind of fathers of this whole 2012, he talked about the fact that what was going to happen was that the earth was going to acquire its conscious mind, and that we would become telepathic. And it's interesting because in the Hindu system they talk about a concept called Indra's net, which is this net of light that connects everything, connects all beings, connects us with the earth, connects us with the universe. And it's this great web. And so the internet is a kind of an outward, concrete manifestation of this concept. And it's bringing us back. Now we are able to speak with people all over the planet. Now, we may get to the point where we don't need that external, because it's teaching us. There are so many traditions, the Tibetan tradition, the Karo shamans of Peru, many of them, that have held these teachings about how to live on light, how to be able to sit in the snow and melt it, all these incredible capacities that were once just natural. And I think that in this change, we are going to be able to rediscover and these capacities and reconnect with really what is our true destiny as human beings.
I have a question. You know, there's a lot of talk about, you know, this whole apocalyptic thing. You know, I just don't get the impression that it needs to, I mean, I don't think it has to be that way, although, you know, in your own words, you know, we're dense. And I think that there's definitely going to have to be some stirring up, some serious stirring up that's going to need to happen. But do you think it's going, you know, that this, you know, the asteroid is going to hit or planet X or, you know, we're going to blow ourselves up? I mean, do you really get the impression that that is what they were talking about as opposed to us as a people, you know, pulling out the bad roots and pulling the weeds out and getting back to basics of who we are and what we need to be to interact with each other and interact with the planet?
Well,
which
actually,
could be pretty serious.
I think it's actually, unfortunately, I guess, it's a little bit of both. Are we taking a break now?
Yeah, we need to take a quick break.
Okay, well, we can answer that on the other side.
Okay. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking to Jay Weidner and Sharon Rose about the mystery of 2012, and we will be back after these words from our sponsors. Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and we're talking to Jay Weidner and Sharon Rose from sacredmysteries.com. And so before the break, we were talking about, you know, the whole apocalyptic viewpoint of what might happen, and you were just starting to give your opinion on whether it was going to be hard, not hard, a mixture of both.
Yeah, basically the motto or the slogan or the axiom of the ancients, especially the alchemists, was as above, so below. And they believe that everything that happens down here on earth is a direct reflection of that which happens in heaven or above us. And everything that happens in heaven above us is a direct reflection of what's going on down here. As if the earth was a jeweled mirror that reflected the entire universe. And in fact, I believe that is exactly what the earth is. But so I would say that it's actually possible for situations in the solar system, say the activity on the sun, to influence human behavior, and vice versa. Human behavior can influence the celestial objects a little bit. So I think that what happens down here on Earth is that which is happening above us, and vice versa. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was something going on celestially at this time, and in fact, there is right now. At this moment, the sun, after years of heating up, is suddenly beginning to cool down. It has lost its electromagnetic field. There's been very few sunspots now since last May, almost a year. The heliosphere, the protective bubble, electromagnetic bubble that sits around the sun, has disappeared. And that means that all of the gamma rays and synchrotron radiation and cosmic rays that are flowing around in space are now hitting us right here on Earth. And we don't even have the machines to measure it because we don't know what's out there because we've been protected by the heliosphere for so long, thousands of years. So there is something going on, and it's not being talked about much because everybody wants something spectacular to occur, and this isn't spectacular; it's slow motion. But we're approaching solar maximum. That's when the sun is at its most active in 2012, and right now the sun is exactly the opposite of what it should be. It should be starting to get very, very, very active at this stage in 2009, and in fact, it's getting less and less active. And this is probably a precursor to solar flares and solar storms, which could be because the sun is not releasing some of the steam now, is going to really release the steam in 2012. I think NASA is, and the United States government and the world governments are concerned about this because they're constructing underground bases and escape hatches that they can go to, and you have to wonder why they're in this fervent building of these things. And the conclusion is exactly why they tell us why they're building them, which is they call it continuity of government, the way that government can survive some kind of disaster. So I don't want to be Pollyannish and tell people that there may not be something going on, because that wouldn't be right. Something is going on right now. But we can't dictate our lives by some woulda, shoulda, coulda. So why bother with it? That's what I say. If the sun's going to solar flare and cause some kind of knock out the satellites, the electromagnetic system of the Earth, there's nothing we can do about that. So I say that that's just a distraction, an interesting distraction, but just a distraction. And we really need to concentrate on what kind of world that we want. The whole thing about 2012 is really about the collective secret. We know that the secret is the ability to manifest what one wants, the rules of attraction. And we know that if you want an 80-bedroom house in Beverly Hills, you really, really imagine it, and you work hard, you'll get your 80-bedroom house in Beverly Hills. Or if you want to have continuous sex, you can get that. We know that's possible. But what 2012 is us asking a collective question. What do we all want? What kind of world do we all want? And we can collectively use the rules of attraction to create the world that we want. My only plea is that we make sure that whatever it is we want, we'll make it as simple as possible, because if we get into complexities, it's going to backfire on us. So,
but it sounds like most people, all they want is money and cars and stuff. You know what I mean? And I think people like you guys and myself and people that have like really kind of been on their path for a while, you know, are thinking more like, I want peace. I want happiness. You know, and thinking more in inner terms and inner well-being as opposed to wanting those external things. And there are so many people that are really just still stuck.
Well, I love what you're saying here, because what I'm saying is that only those who are working consciously for the collective secret will be the ones who succeed. In other words, if 100,000 people are all working towards 5 or 6 simple things that they want their future world to be based on, they're going to succeed over all the people that are trying to manifest, being billionaires or having yachts and all that, because they're all doing it on an individuated level, where we're proposing that it be done on a collective level, so that the power of the collective can overwhelm all the silly little individuals and their silly little ideas about what life is about, what happiness is about, and replace it with community and love and good food and no more wars. And it's just a few simple things. You don't even have to get much more complicated than that.
Yes, and I like to look at it from the Kabbalistic perspective, which I wrote about in The Mystery of 2012. On December 21st, 2012, at 11:11, there's going to be what's called the galactic alignment, where the Earth, the Sun, and the center of the galaxy come into alignment. Now, as you spoke about as above, so below, I look at it as the tree of life, so that the crown Keter is representing the center of the galaxy, and then the heart chakra, the heart center, is representing the sun, and the base chakra, or Malkut, is representing the earth. And what happens is that they come into alignment. So the central pillar, the most important esoteric part of the body, is although they're coming into alignment. And then there's going to be this flow of energy that will bring the heavens and the earth together in the heart. And a new world will come, a very heart-centered world where it's not above and below, it is all together one.
I love that visual. You know, I think based on my listeners, that a lot of them understand about energy movement through the body and how it flows in through the seventh chakra and down through the body to the first chakra and maybe back out again, depending. But no one's ever talked about it in a more macroscopic level where planets and the galaxy would line up to create this giant mega energy flow.
Yeah, that's golden
that's cool.
age. That's what they're watching for. They know, the ancients knew that when this alignment occurred, that all the things were perfected in that moment because the central channel was cleared. And this is no joke. If you look back at the other alignments, you can see that there's these incredibly fantastic changes in history. 13,000 years ago, it was the summer solstice alignment of these planetary and celestial bodies, and we witnessed tremendous climatic changes and the extinctions of all these animals and woolly mammoths and things and gigantic huge changes which climatologists and scientists say looked like they happened in the blink of an eye in like 2 weeks. These changes happened. And then we look back at the last time that this great alignment occurred, which is 26,000 years ago, the last time we entered into the age of Aquarius. And again, we see the emergence of Cro-Magnon man and the disappearance of Neanderthal and this weird leap in evolution that nobody, not even Stephen Jay Gould, can possibly explain. And they have to resort to almost mystical terms like punctuated evolution to be able to explain how a shift in species within the same species could happen so quickly. And the fact that it happened in just the blink of an eye just 26,000 years ago, should give everyone pause to think. Now the Caro in Peru, they say that we're witnessing the emergence of Homo luminous, or a new man, a man of light, a human of light is about to emerge out of Homo sapiens. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it's like a pair of old comfortable jeans. It just feels really good to wear it, so that's why I wear it. I think that might be closer to what's happening than we really think.
So how long does the alignment last? Everyone says, it's December 21st, 2013 or 2012. But, how long does the alignment actually with the galactic center last for? Does it last through the entire age of Aquarius, or is it just for a very small window of time?
No, the galactic alignment actually began coming into alignment actually all the way back in 1980. But it just started then. It really didn't get going until the late 90s when it started lining up every year on the 21st December. And that goes really until about 2016 when it begins to finally go out of alignment. But, the 2012 is as good as any date for the end of the process. It may go all the way to 2016. There's a lot of evidence to say that the change will take another 4 years beyond 2012 to really seal itself and complete itself. And I used to think that was probably more exactly right, and the Mayans were off by 4 years. But now I'm beginning to wonder, with all the other prophecies, and then seeing what's going on in the world, if maybe 2012 really is the end of this age. And I'm more or less firmly convinced that it is.
We had the opportunity to interview about 15 of the top Western astrologers about this time period between now and 2016. And there is Pluto has moved now into Capricorn. And Capricorn is about structure. And Pluto is about deep, deep transformation from the roots. And so they said that configuration, will call for total shifting at the very structures of our world. And at the same time, then it's going into a square with Uranus. And Uranus is, electricity, new invention, also revolution. And this is a configuration that existed in the 60s, but it was a conjunction. So it is kind of a mirror reflection of the energy that happened in the 60s, but it's a more difficult transit. And they were saying that there could be revolution. There could be, I asked Robert Hand, the great astrologer, if he had seen back in history any other time that was similar, and he said the time of the Black Death. But at the same time, you know, we can look at it one way or another. You can say, okay, these are the issues that are at hand. These are the possibilities. What can we do? Yes, there's this energy towards revolution. There's this energy towards amazing new possibilities, time of creativity and transforming in a positive way. It's all, as Dave said before, about how we work within this.
You know, and it's interesting. A number of years ago, I was having a conversation about alternative health care and, you know, that people were going to stand up and there was going to be this revolution. I'm like, why? Kids aren't going to do anything today. And he goes, it's not going to be the kids that are going to do it. He goes, it's going to be all the, you know, baby boomers and leftover hippies that, you know, are going to kind of come back because they're already bred with that energy. And with everything, it's like, okay, I worked my entire life to create something for myself, and now you're taking it away. And I could see where all these old folk, you know, are the ones out there creating the biggest ruckus.
You're exactly right, and I believe that too. And I think that it's already happening. And I'm an old fart too, and I'm really had it with it, and I really don't care anymore about, you know, what they're threatening to do to us and all this. I've given up on caring about what they're doing, and I think that the change is so vital. We just need to do anything we can at this point, short of being violent.
We need to take a quick break. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking to Jay Weidner and Sharon Rose about the mystery of 2012. Their site is sacredmysteries.com, and we'll be back after these messages. Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and I'm here talking with Jay Weidner and Sharon Rose. And I think this would be the correct thing to say, the producers of 2012, The Odyssey, and Time Wave 2013. Before the break, we were talking about the transition and the old people, the old folk going out there with their picket signs. And I don't know if we were done with that idea, but I mean, I could totally see it happening myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten pretty desperate for our generation because we bought into the virtual reality, and we had a pretty good handle on things, and then we decided to join the system that we knew wasn't real, and we joined the system, and it was all virtual, but we believed it wasn't, and we believed all that money was actually ours when it never was, and now that money's gone, and we have nothing. And what do people, at our age do when they have nothing? It's not a good thing, and, you know, it should be said that most of the people that were our founding fathers in the Revolution were not young men. It's true that Thomas Jefferson was a young guy, but Thomas Paine was in his late 50s, and Benjamin Franklin was in his 70s, and George Washington was in his late 50s. So none of these guys were actually young men, actually, at all, except for Thomas Jefferson. So that should give pause to anyone, you know, who thinks that a revolution can't happen by a bunch of old fogies.
Well, I come from I think television came around the time I was born. So I'm that first generation that was conditioned by television. And just like in Rudolf Steiner's Waldorf education, they do not want children to watch television until they are at least in the 6th grade, because it takes away their own ability to imagine, their own creativity. And I think that we have been really conditioned into a world where we have been put in a state of perpetual craving for things we don't have, for material objects, for sensationalism. And it is time that we completely transmute that into a very different way of relating to each other, once again, heart to heart. And
but I mean, young people today don't get it. I mean, I have 2 stepkids, and it would be the summer, and they would be driving me crazy, and I'd be like, go outside and play. get out of the house. And they'd go out there and there would be none of their friends outside. And they would sit on the front porch and just sit there. And it's like, well, why don't you go do something? We don't know what.
Yep.
They had no clue. They didn't know how to, like, play catch or ride their bikes or get some chalk and draw on the, you know, they didn't know what to do.
Well, their parents have been told that they can't go ride their bike because something horrible might happen to them. So it's a kind of, you know, fear-based reality.
Yeah, they can't even, kids don't even walk to school if they live more than 3 blocks away from school because the parents are so afraid the kid's going to get kidnapped or something when actually probably 1 out of, you know, 1 billion kids is actually really kidnapped. And, but, you know, the press and the media play up all the stories, have us all locked in a world of fear, and now we're watching our children who are way, way prematurely obese, and we're watching all this, but I'm here to tell you all that it doesn't matter because all of the things that we think are going on are not going on. What's really going on here is the change of changes, and those kids will not even be inside because they're going to be too busy learning how to grow their own food and taking care of themselves, or they're not going to make it. And it's going to get down to that soon. And we're going to find that it's a much better place. That living semi-rurally, growing our own food, taking care of ourselves in holistic ways, and bringing all the esoteric secrets down into the local areas that we live. This is a world that our children are really going to appreciate, but they're going to go kicking and screaming. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be, and we have to accept that. It's another problem that our generation has to think and face.
So I want to
in our film Wave 2013, Gene Houston spoke about the fact that we've lost the heart. We have replaced the hearth where the grandparents and families all sat together, where the community sat together and told the stories and the myths and legends that sustained their culture and had that amazing exchange of knowledge, and that's been replaced with the television set. And she says the problem is that no hearth, no heart, no continuity. And that is going to change. That is as we are forced to make this reconnection with the earth that gives us life.
And that's really a good way to put it because that's what's happening. We're being forced into it. Many of us, and probably the people listening, we actually want it. But the rest of them are going to go in kicking and screaming. And it's really up to us to be calm and cool, present answers that are cogent and clear, and will ensure survivability, and then show that once you get your spiritual house in order, then the rest of it comes easy. And, you know, so that's really what we have to do. And people need to take up disciplines like yoga or Zen meditation or something, Tai Chi. It doesn't really matter what it is, but do it, and do it every day, and get into it and center yourself, because we're going to be in the whirlwind storm here. We're in it right now, but you know the winds are going to get harder, the rain's going to get harder, and we've got to be ready for it. And the only ones that are spiritually viable will be able to lead the blind out of the desert.
I worked for years in the schools, elementary, middle, and high schools around New York and Connecticut, bringing music, dance, mythology to these children. And at first, they were, some of them, a little resistant. But once they understood what was going on, it was just amazing what came out of them. This creativity, this imagination, these stories. It was like they were just waiting for someone to give them permission and release all this that had been held back, which is really, these things are just natural to child to live in wonder. And instead, they've been conditioned to live in fear. But they're still so, on a deep level, there is an openness to the magic of of manifestation, the magic of the world, the magic of all our reality and what we're capable of. So I feel that, you know, even though they're kind of out in this virtual world right now, that it won't be that hard to bring them back in touch with the earth and with each other in celebration.
You know, but it's kind of like, and I'm just trying to think of, like Logan's Run. You know, I'm trying to think of a movie where people have not done certain things for so long, or they just, you know, like, oh, rats, there's the music. We need to take a quick break. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're here talking to Jay Wiedner and Sharon Rose from sacredmysteries.com about the mysteries of 2012, and we'll be back after these messages. Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and we're here talking to Jay Wiedner and Sharon Rose about the mystery of 2012. Their website is sacredmysteries.com, and the site for the book is mysteryof2012.com. So, I forget exactly what we were talking about after the break, and I wrote down a commentary, and I'm like, okay, but what does that have to do with anything? You know, but all right, this was my commentary. Was that over the last, and I'm going to say 50 years, as a society, we have lost our basic skill sets in being able to survive. I mean, I remember growing up, we learned how to plant vegetables and weed and water, and, you know, we all knew how to cook, you know, campfire, cook, and, you know, we learned how to do that as just part of growing up, you know, and you know, people learned how to, like, do woodworking or fix cars. And today, it's like those skills are so unimportant that those traditions and the ability to do them or understand how to do them are, you know, they're going away. It'll make, you know, the old carpenter be the wise man now.
Well, that's a great question. We actually, we're trying to do something about that. We're creating a book, film, conference, festival, website called Future Shift, How to Survive and Thrive in the 21st Century, in which we are going to get the experts to teach all of those things and bring them back fast so that people can learn how to milk a cow, how to plant a garden, how to chop wood, how to lay brick, all the things that we're going to need, all the skills that we're going to need. You know, I was listening to a radio show the other day, NPR, and they had somebody on who was talking about, you know, what jobs you want in the future, and they had this one guy, and he was getting a medical degree, and then he was going to go get his law degree, and then they had another guy, and he was a truck driver and a refrigerator installer. And the expert said, well, obviously the truck driver refrigerator installer has a much better future than the doctor going to turn into a lawyer. And the commentator was stunned. And he said, what do you mean? He says, they're always going to need truck drivers. You're always going to need someone who knows how to lift stuff up into your house. He said, but who's going to pay for doctors and lawyers unless they vitally need them in an era of scarcity? And so, you know, again, evolution has this funny way of sorting things out. And if kids today, or the kids listening, or the parents that are listening, you know, are not going out of their way to learn how to take care of themselves and their lives and inform themselves and face this world as it really is, they're not going to make it. And you know what? They don't deserve to make it. I hate to sound so harsh, but you know, why should society waste its precious resources supporting those who care not to advance themselves or to learn? And nature is a harsh mistress. She's beautiful. You want to love her. You want to hold her. But I'll tell you, she's a harsh mistress, and she'll kick your butt in. And that's what we're about to face. You know, nature's going to come back with a vengeance, and we're either going to have to learn how to deal with it, or we're not going to survive. And Sharon and I are dedicated to teaching the things, both spiritually and physically, that will help us survive. And I have to say, sometimes I wonder if it isn't all just a huge conspiracy to destroy us, because I can't believe that anyone would invest in a future where people do not know how to grow their own food, do not know how to take care of themselves. It just seems bizarre to me.
Or are dependent on genetically modified food that is clearly weaker than what would be natural. That part, this whole thing with the cloning and the shift over to all this genetically modified food, it's terrifying. You'd think that these people who are putting this forth, it's amazing if they even have children. I can't imagine that they would want their children to be partaking of this and trying to destroy everything that's natural and replace it with these artificial things.
Well, that's like one of my big soapboxes, but all right, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second. Because in the past, there have been a number of like end of the world, beginning of new development prophecies that have been put out. And so what makes this one different than any of the other ones that have come before it in the past?
Well, because those were based on people that, like computer experts, who told us that all the computers were going to crash on Y2K. Other prophecies were based on fundamentalist preachers who, would make a prophecy that the world would end, the world didn't end, and then, of course, the next book they had out was Why I Was Wrong About My Prophecy. And I've been watching this for years, and I'm a journalist, and I don't really want to be the purveyor of any of this. I investigated a cross in the south of France, a 400-year-old cross, which somehow predicted that this would happen at this time period. It said that the earth would be tried by fire, and I sat back to see if it would happen, and here I am, 4 years shy of the date on the cross, and I feel that I have a moral obligation to come forth and tell people some truths before it's too late. But as far as the prophecies being real, all the prophecies say is that a great, huge change is going to happen in this little 20-year time period. So I leave it up to each listener to decide whether the world is vastly different than it was in 1991-92, or things are just pretty much humming along like they were then. If they think things are just humming along just like they were then, and everything was fine and dandy just like it was then, and then they're probably not too worried about anything. But if you're sensitive enough to know that there is something serious going on here, something deadly even, then it's time to wake up and take notice. Sometimes the deadly fear can be an impetus for you to save your life. I mean, if you're hiking down the dark woods in the forest and you hear a mountain lion growl in front of you, you're going to be filled with fear, and you're also going to retreat very quickly. And you'll save yourself if you know how to retreat. And this has actually happened to me. So I'm not so anti-fear. I say that if you use fear, you can use fear to advance yourself physically and spiritually, and if you're doing that, then that's good. If you're just using fear to sit around cuddling in the corner, afraid of, everything, and won't even go outside and play because you haven't even figured out what nature is and what fresh air is, I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm afraid that most of the people in this world right now are that way. And I don't really think I or any of us can convert them. But what I think we can do is to give assurance to the people who already know that this is happening or already feel that it's happening, so they're assured that their feelings are right. And then secondly, let's grab all the people on the border and try to get them on our side. I'm not concerned about the people who will never believe it, but the people who are beginning to question whether this world is really not coming to some kind of grand finale, those people I want in our camp, because those are the people that will help change and reshape the future world. And all the people that aren't going to shape and create the future world, that have no interest in doing that, they're not going to have a future world then, because it'll be our world, because they're not actively trying to do that. So because we're actively trying to do it, and it may be the first time in history that a huge collection of people are trying to consciously remake the future, That is the real beauty of 2012. And via the internet and TV shows and radio shows, we are consciously rethinking the future, whereas before, no one really thought more than next week, next month, or maybe possibly 4 or 5 months into the future. So that in itself is a shift in consciousness, and it hasn't happened on a group level to a large degree yet, but it's growing.
I recently heard that the American Revolution, it was only really wanted by about 3% who were leaders, and that, you know, they were strong enough to convince the entire rest of the country to join them. So that I found very interesting. I've been very taken with the whole, you know, our founding fathers and how our country came about and the beauty of what our country is based on, and we carry this theme through the films. And when we were in Peru with the Q'ero shamans, they were telling us their prophecies, and they had a message specifically for America. And they said that America has a great head, great mind, but now that understanding has to come down to the heart, that the mind and the heart have to become one, because without the gifts of the heart, we're not going to be able to think our way out out of the problems that are facing us.
You sure we just don't have a big head? You know, Jay, you made a comment that I think needs to be brought out, is about people being sensitive. I have so many people that come through my office and their complaints are the same. It's like they're in fear, they don't know what's going on, they're caught in this turbulence of moving energy, and they're going, what is it? You know, and they need to hear, as far as I'm concerned, that this is part of the process, and because you are having those feelings, you are actually tuning into what the energy of the planet is right now. And even though it doesn't feel real good, it actually is a very good thing because you're not unaware of what's going on around you.
You can either use fear to save your life, or you can use fear to freeze you in the moment. And the politicians and our leaders are using it to freeze us in the moment, because then they can go rob us blind while we're frozen. And I say, use fear to wake you up. Believe me, if you're hiking through the woods and a mountain lion growls at you, you are more awake in that moment than you will be in 999 other moments in your life out of every 1,000. And so, you know, it can wake you up. And if you're feeling it, then you need to wake up. You don't want to wallow in the fear. That doesn't do anything. You want to say, what can I do about it? I work every day, you know, trying to take care of my family. And I call on all men, especially men, to go back to their roles of taking care of their families. They've abrogated their responsibility. They need, the women and children are going to need them in the future. It's going to get to a point where, you know, they're going to need them for food and a lot of other things. And the same with women. Women need to rise forth and show courage because that gives men courage. And men today are just not courageous. They're not real men anymore. And it's almost in some ways kind of sickening. And they need to rise up, and and you know what? If we need to rise up and a Gandhi-like revolution and say, no, we're not participating in this anymore, we're done with it, we need to do that. And I encourage you to do it. I think we should all be doing it. And I think it's time to stop saying that we don't want to cause trouble and all that. I think it's time to cause trouble. That's what I think. And I'm here to cause as much trouble as I can, but not get anyone hurt, but to cause trouble, to bring this system face to face with what it is and what it has become and what it has done to itself, to the people of the world, and to the planet itself.
Any commentary, Sharon?
Well, we heard, you know, this whole election that we just went through was all about change. Clearly, the people in this country want change. But, you know, what is that change? and what is the quality of that change. I think that most people, if you really got down to, the root of it, they just want some food. They want to have wonderful relationships with people. I think they want community again. I think that we're really missing all of the wonderful things that, for centuries really made us human. And I think that's at the base of it. And so many people are just very, very disturbed, that I'm finding anyway, that it seems that right now what's going on is just more of the same. I mean, there's a few areas where it seems like maybe there's some changes, but it just seems that, again, it's this Band-Aid situation, all of these bailouts, and now we're getting more and more indebted to China. And, they're wanting guarantees on their loans. And what are we going to guarantee them? We're going to be in debt to them? And I think that people more and more, I think specifically because of the Internet, are really all over the world starting to wake up and really look at this. And of course, we have to move beyond fear. We have to go beyond hope and fear into action. Right action.
I think that's exactly right. Every day I get closer and closer, to advocating it. That at this point we really need to have mass sit-ins and where we don't leave. Right now they're trying to outlaw. There's a bill in Congress which could very likely pass because Monsanto is behind it, in which they're going to outlaw organic farming and non-GMO seeds. Okay? Now, some people
Are you
say,
kidding?
No, I'm not. I wish I was. In fact, it's rising through Congress, and the congresswoman who's putting it forth is the wife of Monsanto's vice president. And so this thing is moving through Congress, and nobody's talking about it, and Obama's going to sign it, and we need to say no. No. We're not doing any of this stuff anymore. They're passing bills without reading them. There's things in the bills that we don't even know about until a year later when innocent people are arrested for things they didn't even know they were doing, like the farmer that accidentally had GMO seeds, spill over into his land from the other farmer, and then he had to pay Monsanto millions of dollars for stealing their seeds, which wasn't true. And this is all going on, and this is at the basis of everything that we are. And if we don't rise up now, if we don't get off of our knees now, we're going to all be laying on our backs, if you know what I mean. And we really need to stand up and say no. And when we do that, and I really mean this, when we stand up and we say no, we're not doing it anymore, we're not eating your food, we're not going to give our children to you for your wars, when we do that, they will back down. That's the first thing that will happen. When they back down, and they will, then we're really going to realize what kind of power we have. And, nature loves courage, and it removes barriers for the courageous. And that is what happens. And so I say, move forward. We're in a world of high risk. We might as well take more risks. Because guess what? Just because the world is going out of control shouldn't concern any of you, because you were never in control. So the world's going to go out of control. It doesn't mean twit to anybody, because you weren't in control. You never were in control, but you actually have a chance right now to gain control over your life. And you can't fall for false messiahs. Aliens aren't going to come from space and save us.
Guru's not going to come and hit you on the head and make you enlightened instantly.
It's highly unlikely that Jesus is going to return anytime soon. So we have to realize that it's us. So we got to quit relying on media-created messiahs that are not going to save us. And the proof is in the pudding as far as I'm concerned. And I like Barack Obama as much as I like anybody else in politics, but he's not really doing anything that's going to change and solve our problems.
He's not dealing with it at the root. He's just putting more and more and more Band-Aids and printing more and more money, it seems.
Well, I mean, my jaw's still hanging down about they're trying to outlaw organic farmers. I don't even understand what that would be about and what their motivation would be about. What, they want us to eat their green beans?
They want control of everything. They want control of every single thing. It's corporate control. Monsanto wants no competitors. Organic gardening is growing. Organic food sales are growing at about 5 to 8% annually. It's huge leaps in bounds, and it's threatening the edifice that Monsanto and the other GMO companies have built their whole lives on. And they are doing it because they are threatened by it. There's nothing they can do to stop it. But I want to say one thing. Time is on our side. And we're going to win this war. We're going to win this struggle. And but we have to be able to sacrifice and want to sacrifice a lot. If we don't, then, you know, it's going to be harder to win it than it is right at this moment. But right now, we have the tools necessary to move forth. We have to put our bodies on the line. We have to say no, no, no. We have to learn how to say no. It's the most important word in the English language. We say no, 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 we're not doing any of that anymore. We're done with it.
Well, I read some of this bill that we're talking about, and in the name of, you know, protecting us, of food safety,
yep.
They are making it so that there's going to be a zillion inspectors that are going, even if you have like a garden, you'll be inspected to see if it's, you know, according to them. And it's, I don't even know where they're going to get the money to have all these inspectors anyway, so I don't, in my heart of hearts, I don't even think that it'll, even if it goes through, I think that it will all collapse because I don't see how they'll be able to train these people and implement.
Well, but it's not just that. They're on the verge of outlawing vitamins, and Obama says he's going to sign it. We've got to wake up.
Well, they're trying to do the same thing to chiropractors.
They
where
are.
Only medical doctors and DOs can do any kind of manipulation.
That's right. And this is not, I don't like, I'm a political atheist. And my political atheism has given me a very clear view of what's going on. I have no allegiances to either party at all. And I did not like George Bush, and I did not like the Republicans. And I'll tell you, I had great high hopes for Barack Obama because I'm a true patriot for this country. But I'll tell you what, if we go on like we're going on, and he keeps spending money like he's going on and outlawing all alternative medical practices in food, this world is going to be even worse than it was under George Bush. Because we're certainly not accountable.
But there are so many people that have begun to look at alternative stuff, taking supplements, eating better food, working with chiropractors, because the chiropractors do a lot of nutritional work with their clients, and I mean, there was an outrage when they tried to take away the supplements and put them under prescriptions where you couldn't go to the supermarket and buy vitamin C anymore. There was an outcry.
I'm telling you that there's a law coming up right now that's going to seek to do that again. A worse law than that one was in 1990.
And I'm sure no one will see it.
That's exactly what they're doing. They're not being overt like they used to be. So they're going to put like this organic food law. You can't even understand the bill when you're reading it. You have to read it 5 times to understand what it's saying. It's in such obscure language, but you reach the frightening conclusion that if you're not growing your vegetables in a right and proper way according to the people in Washington, D.C., they're going to fine you and tell you to take down your garden.
Right, there's a whole part about seeds, about collecting of seeds, and it has to be done this way and that way, and, they want, and also about, contamination and,
they want absolute control.
I'm just laughing because there's going to be a bunch of people with hydroponic, grow garage tomatoes.
Yep. They'll be busted like pot growers. Right?
I know.
They'll be coming in. The DEA will be coming in and kicking down their hydroponics, and I don't know. At this point, we just have to say no more. And I think that they'll respond to us. I really do. I think that that they will come our way if we want to.
If we stand up.
We stand up.
All right, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're here tonight talking to Jay Wiedner and Sharon Rose about 2012, and their videos are 2012 The Odyssey and Time Wave 2013, and we will be back after these messages. Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and we're talking to Jay Weidner and Sharon Rose from SacredMysteries.com. So, Sharon, I have a question for you. Woohoo! I've been waiting a long time to get here. With the emergence of 2012, or with 2012 coming, there's been a lot of talk about the emergence of goddess energy or the divine feminine. What's that about? I mean, in my mind, when I hear something like that, I think, is it that we're going to go back to like a matriarchal society, or is it just that the male and female energies are going to become more balanced?
I feel that the goddess energy really is about that balance. In all the traditions, when they talk about this, when they talk about the golden age, they say it's a matriarchal kind of system, possibly, but that male and female are completely in harmony. That's what is golden about it. It's this beauty. And this hunger for the goddess energy, this return of the goddess, is, well, from one perspective, in ancient Egypt, Isis was known as the center of the galaxy itself. And so this energy of the galactic alignment is actually coming from the center of the galaxy. So on this, etheric level, there is this energy coming in that is this feminine creative force. And I think that what has to happen is that women really need to rise up now and take hold of their true feminine power. I feel that we have been indoctrinated, in the last, since TV and advertising, to emulate men, to take their values and try to become tough and hard in a certain, and very linear like men, whereas, women's nature is different. And that's what's so beautiful about men and women. And I think that it's time for women to really come back to their true feminine power. And what does that mean? In many of the traditions, I grew up in a Jewish family. And in the Jewish family, traditionally, it was the woman as the mother, as the first teacher that held and holds the moral values and the moral teachings of the family. And I think that has kind of dissolved away as women try to become like men. And I think that we have to come back, and women actually have to lead this revolution, this shifting time. We have to come back and take our true power, not this power to lead corporations, but the power, to grow wonderful children, to create community in the times prior to the patriarchy. Women held incredible positions. Women were healers. Women, were what you might call politicians. They sat around and, talked about everything that would go on in the community, and then would, decide, okay, if this man is having some problems, and we'll send her over to help him. And if this child is having problems, we'll do it. The women, in some ways, were the community leaders. And it's starting to happen again, but we've been so indoctrinated into, this kind of corporate way of seeing things, this greed, control, and all of that, and power and domination, that we've lost sight of who we really are. So we have to have the courage to stand up and, live in truth, find truth. We all know deep inside of us, everyone really does know what is right. They know what is right. But we have been so veiled, by all of this mental chatter that's been coming at us for so long that, we have to learn to break free and just, take our stand and not be afraid to live in truth and, look into the eyes of our husbands, our children, our parents, our friends, and see that they're really just waiting for their mothers to return and show them the way. I think that really has to do, the goddesses, because I've written a book about all of this. The goddesses, for me, are role models role models of right action, of courage, of love, of compassion, of sensuality. We've been living in a world where everything is, kind of sensationalized in a very dark way, where, sexuality and the body have been considered, this something bad, when, how could we even be alive if there wasn't such a thing? And we have to come back to the sacredness of our world and of us and relationships. And women have to take the lead to do this. And once women rise up, then everything will change.
But don't you think to a certain point that women, your comment about women getting corporate and, wanting all of this power, that women in the general sense of the word needed to reclaim their power and independence first, and kind of take it to the far end of the pendulum so that we could actually find balance within ourselves?
Exactly. I completely agree with that. And I was part of the feminist movement, so I was there, but I feel that we've gone overboard the other way. And now it's time, we have achieved a lot, but it's time to remember.
But at what cost?
Yeah.
That's what I say. And I think a lot of women and I know a lot of women, I was in the corporate world who rose all the way to the top, and I have to tell you, they weren't the happiest of people and in their lives. Their lives were frequently shattered. They had no relationships. Their children were estranged. And I think what they did was, in order to get into the corporate world and play the man's game, you have to be extremely tough. I was in that world, and I know, and you have to have a thick skin, and you better be ready to tumble every single day, all day long, from people who actually want to destroy you to take your job in a dog-eat-dog situation. And I think that world was, women wanted that world, but they did not know what it was really about. And they got into it, and there was a thing called the mommy track about 20 years ago, where all the women were joining the corporations, realizing that it really wasn't too much fun, and running back to having children. And I think, men don't even really want that world. They've glamorized it and made it so it looks like men want to be in this technocratic corporate world, but most men in that world are extremely unhappy. So, and I was in that world, and I can testify, believe me, there's nothing harder in the whole world than working for a gigantic corporation, even as a high-up manager. So, we have to get rid of that model. That's the model that has to be shed and destroyed. And when women were falsely yearning for the virtual world that men had created, not realizing that there was nothing there but pain and a little bit of money. But actually, by the time the government got done taxing it, there wasn't much of that either. And I think what women have to do is say, that whole model's just wrong, guys, and we got to try something new. Now, I'm not advocating socialism or something, because I'm not a socialist, but what I am advocating is a return to smallness, a return to local, a return to small businesses running things and small governments, and get rid of the federal level, maybe even cut the state level down. And if people in Southern Oregon want to support gay marriage and eat organic food, and people in Arkansas don't, that's fine. We don't care, but everyone should be allowed to live what kind of life they want to live. And I think when we do that, the communities that present the best way of living will be the ones that everyone begins to emulate. So you can have a lot of hard drinking hicks back in the Midwest, and they can have their town, and then you can have some enlightened people somewhere else, and they can have their town, and people can compare the two and see which place they really want to live. And I would say that the people who are living a somewhat enlightened lifestyle in their small local villages will be the ones that attract the best people. So, it's a long-term strategy. It's not a short-term strategy. And, those of us who know that we're eternal beings know that just because we might fail in this life doesn't mean that ultimately we will fail.
It always makes you wonder, why did we choose to incarnate now? It would just be so much easier to watch and be like a spirit guide.
We want to be in the golden age. The most exciting time to be alive is the time in the transition between the Iron Age and the Golden Age. That's the greatest show on earth. It's the greatest show ever, and we're in it, and it's going to be spectacular and loud, and it's going to be like a Led Zeppelin concert, and it's going to be huge and gigantic, and and spectacular, and lasers and everything, and we're getting front row seats for it. So we should all be happy about that. And very few souls get to see this thing happen.
Most That's when we get to eat our hydroponic tomatoes.
Yeah, you got to get. Now, she's not kidding. You guys really do have to start taking care of yourselves and start growing your own veggies, and it's really important.
Just reconnect with the natural world.
Yeah.
Most people, they never even touch their feet might touch the ground, but their hands never get into the dirt. And just in many traditional societies, somebody's having a mental breakdown, they just have them move rocks around so that they have that visceral connection, and it calms their mind. And I think that that's part of the problem we're having, and that we're so disconnected to the earth itself.
Well, I taught a nutrition class for a while, and in one group that I taught, because I had my box of junk, and I'd hold up my hamburger helper and, junk, just pure junk, and ask how much of this food people were eating. And so then I would go on to talk about, you need to eat from like the edge of the supermarket, because to me, the first step is let's get rid of the junk. Let's start like actually cooking food, and then we can talk organic, whatever as a secondary step. And I had a woman look at me and go, but what do you eat? And half the room kind of shook their head with her. What do you eat? And I'm like, get a Betty Crocker cookbook and cook something. It don't have to come out of a box. And people are in that mentality. It's scary.
Yeah, that's why, it's a serious situation that we find ourselves in which, we're all off on this one plane, and then 90% of everyone else is all off on this other plane that has no idea what's happening. And Nostradamus said it was the great bifurcation of souls at the end of this age. And literally, he said like 90% are going to get left behind in this turmoil, and that 10% are going to see what's going on, and they're going to create a much better place. So there's a lot of prophets that say this kind of stuff. So it's time that being psychic is an evolutionary advantage. The hunter-gatherer tribes that were psychic survived. The ones that weren't didn't survive. So the hunter-gatherer tribes that had shamans who knew where the fish would be tomorrow or where the elk would be 2 weeks from now, they survived because they knew where the food was. So, don't shirk this psychic component. It's a very real part of this. And Europeans killed off a lot of their psychics, during the Middle Ages and the Inquisitions. And so we're bereft of our psychics, and that's why we have to go out to indigenous people like the Karo or the Mayans or, people in Australia to find out what is coming at us in the future, because a lot of us have lost that ability. But there are still some of us who have it in the West, and we're trying to tell the rest of the world what's coming down the track straight at us. And, we can only save those that listen, and those that don't, cannot be saved. And it's just a hard, cold fact. It's something I've had to come to grips with as I've been doing this work, that, gosh, a lot of people are going to listen to me, not do anything, and they're going to die, and I don't want that. But I can't do anything about it. I can only work on the people who are listening.
So, see, it's just really interesting because I've had different people on, and they just say that it's going to be this upliftment, we're going to uplift. And, how do you sit there and segregate out who's going to live and who's going to die? It's like there's a lot of people that have guns. I live in Texas. You know what I mean? And so I might be growing my little hydroponic garage tomatoes.
I'll be with you.
And get robbed, or whatever. from the people that have not. I mean, I could see where, if that's the track, it could be like a free-for-all for a while.
Well, it's going to be.
Yes,
I'm just going to lay it on you. It's going to be. And those who are ready for the free-for-all will survive it. And those that don't, won't. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we need to take a break. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and we're here talking to Jay Weidner and Sharon Rose about the mysteries of 2012, and their site is sacredmysteries.com, and we'll be back after these messages. Hello, I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and we're here talking to Jay Weidner and Sharon Rose about the mystery of 2012. And so we have about 8 minutes left, and I want to spend a little time talking about your videos and stuff, but I want to ask one last question. Is this transformation something that we should be scared of, or is it something that we should welcome with open arms?
Oh, we should welcome it with open arms.
No, wait a minute. I think that we have to be careful here. I think the next 4 years are not anything that you're going to want to welcome with open arms.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, but I think after that you'll want to. But for the next 4 years, it's going to be seriously ugly, and we need to prepare for that. And anyone who is not preparing for it is not going to do very well. And we're short-term pessimists, long-term optimists. And every day gets us closer to that point when the world will alter. But the in-between is not going to be very pretty.
But I also believe that, it's giving us an opportunity to go deep within ourselves and find our eternal nature and, learn how to be the calm in the midst of the storm. I think that each one of us is going to be called upon to find that place of clarity, that place of eternity inside themselves. And I think that humanity, when faced with these challenges, that we will rise up, that we will find new ways.
So, I always like to leave my listeners with something that they can walk off with. So what would be something that they could do to start to prepare for the transition? Something that they could achieve, in the next week or the next month, or at least begin the plan of moving forward with something.
It's really a two-step process. There's two parts to that answer. The first part is that they have to take care of themselves physically, and the second part is they have to take care of themselves spiritually. And to do the second one, you must do the first one. To do the first one, you must do the second one. So you need to become as self-sufficient as you possibly can, and in lieu of that, or while you're going towards that, you really need to get some food and store it. And you need to not tell anyone you have it. Just being straight with you. And you need to then, when you've secured yourself and your family, you need to probably move to some land that has water on it. You need to find like-minded people to live around, and you need to do all of this really, really fast. And when you've got all that done, and that's you need to simultaneously create some kind of spiritual dynamic in your daily life.